I'd like to call the Mentor City Council regular meeting for November 19th in order. The invocation will be given by Councilman Blake.
Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day. Help us to use good judgment for the business at hand and guide us in wisdom with a continuing sense of truth and fairness for the community we represent.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Here.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Mrs. Dowling? Here. Mr. Kirchner?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Mr. Landig?
Here.
Mr. Marne?
Here.
We have the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting for November 6th, 2019.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Public hearings, we have none. Tabled legislation, we have none. New legislation, ordinance number 19-0-089.
An ordinance to authorize transfers of funds, advances of funds, and revisions to appropriations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Malinowski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Polibiak. Members of council, you have before you a transfer of funds, advance of funds, and appropriation revision piece of legislation. Firstly, we recommend the authorization of 2 permanent cash transfers, as noted out of our tax increment finance fund, to fund the street lighting fund and also to close out the Hopkins Road resurfacing fund. Secondly, there are 5 temporary cash advances totaling $1,483,000. And those are all from the general fund to be returned back to the general fund upon revenue source and the applicable appropriation revisions that go along with those. I would recommend approval of the entire ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Council?
Move to suspend. Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Ordinance number 19-0-089 has passed. Ordinance number 19-0-090.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Capital Aluminum and Glass Corporation for the installation of new windows at the second-floor offices of the police department.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Schweikert, please.
Thank you. Bids are open on November 1st for the replacement of windows in the second floor of the police department. This project is part of the city's overall efforts to make energy-saving improvements to our facilities. The new windows will significantly improve this building's envelope in that they are thermally insulated, contain argon gas between the panes, are coated with a tint to reflect ultraviolet light, and will have new flashing and sealants. 2 bids were received for this project, with the low bid submitted by the Capital Aluminum and Glass Corporation with a bid of $85,000. CT Consultants has analyzed this bid and recommends an award to the low bidder. Thank you.
Council?
Move to suspend. Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes. Move to approve. Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Ordinance number 19-0-090 has passed. Ordinance number 19-0-091.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a memorandum of agreement between the Ohio Department of Transportation and the City of Mentor, Ohio, for the release of conditions and reversionary interest on a portion of land conveyed by Director's Deed 2013R0017047 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Mr. President, some years ago, the council is aware of the fact that we acquired a large portion of property from the Ohio Department of Transportation off Center Street, which we have converted into a very useful detention area, storm drainage detention area, and that has worked out well for us. The company CRT who was immediately adjacent to that property, had petitioned us to either allow a portion of that area to be used or to be sold off for purposes of a large improvement expansion project that they have undertaken. We have worked with them very closely. They are willing to make improvements to the remainder of the portion of that detention area to maintain the existing capacity. And we are recommending to allow them to move forward with the necessary component of them moving forward with the project would be allowing them to purchase this property. It comes with it a need to deal with an aspect of the original acquisition, which the city was not required to pay for. So I will ask Mr. Zeman to clarify that as only he can.
Okay, thank you. Mr. President, members of council, basically they deeded it to the city for nothing, but they kept, ODOT specifically, a reversionary interest which said that if the property in whole or in part was no longer utilized for any public purpose, it then reverts back to ODOT. This will allow the city to acquire to a sort of a free fee simple. In other words, ODOT will, in exchange for payment of the appraised fair market value, release that reversionary interest. That allows the city to either maintain ownership of that specific portion of the property, and again, this is only a portion of that larger area that is under discussion. It can maintain ownership of it, or it'll be free to dispose of it however the council ultimately thinks is best. So removing that reversionary interest will allow for its more unfettered disposition if the council chooses in the future.
Thank you.
So then, council, we would then, at a later date, bring you a piece of legislation transferring that property to CRT, which they have agreed to pay for the full cost of.
Thank you. Counsel?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Ordinance number 19-0-091 has passed. Ordinance number 19-0-92.
An ordinance approving an amendment to the Wood Norton subdivision plat to accept the public dedication of Wood Norton Way and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next three ordinances essentially deal with the same project that you know as the Macy Family Dental Medical Office building off of Norton Parkway. And essentially, this simply accepts the plat for the roadway, which will be dedicated to us, and we will improve using TIF funds, which is the next ordinance before you. Ms. Mitchell, did you want to weigh in on that at all?
I would just add to that, Mr. Flipiak, that at the Planning Commission's September 12th meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously approved this dedication that was previously planned to be a 24-foot wide common access drive that would have been private. They approved this by a vote of 6-0, and they've also amended the plat, which and indicated at the end of the cul-de-sac that there will be a 30-foot wide access to our adjacent city parcel. That's all.
Thank you. City Council?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Ordinance number 19-0-092 is passed. Ordinance number 19-0-093.
An ordinance declaring the improvement to certain real property within the city of Mentor, Ohio, known as permanent parcel number 16A00900000280, to be a public purpose and exempt from real property taxes, identifying certain public infrastructure improvements that, once made, will directly benefit the property, requiring the owner to make service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a public improvement tax increment equivalent fund, approving and authorizing the execution and delivery of a TIF agreement with Norton Parkway MOB LLC, together with related authorizations, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a TIF ordinance. It allows us to TIF the one parcel that's identified in your legislation. We originally were looking at all three parcels being included, but since there's no construction activity on those, we want to reserve the opportunity for those to be TIFed in the future as the area develops. This is a little bit different than some of the others that you've had before you. Typically, you've seen us do a 30-year TIF period where we have made the schools whole. Because the city is paying for this full cost of this up front, and we have a number of projects that are relying on the balance in the TIF fund right now, we're looking for a little quicker payback on this. So the Ohio Revised Code offers us the option of going with a 10-year period that allows for a 75% abatement that includes all taxing authorities. That would include the schools. So the schools are not made whole on this, but it's a short period, and it's only 75% abatement. But having done the analysis financially, it will get us our roadway paid for in a quicker amount of time and restore the general fund appropriately.
Counsel?
Move to suspend.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes. Ordinance number 19-0-093 is passed. Ordinance number 19-0-094.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to award a bid contract to DeJoya Suburban Excavating LLC for the Norton Parkway MOB Road Improvements Project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Hey, Mr. President, Mr. Swigger, please.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. Norton Parkway MOB Road Improvements, also known as Wood Norton Way, is located approximately 850 feet east of Garfield Road on the south side of Norton Parkway. This project will construct an approximately 500-foot-long, 25-foot-wide, two-lane concrete roadway and cul-de-sac with associated utilities. 13 bids for the project were received and opened on November 1st. Bids received for the project range from a low bid of approximately $625,000 to a high bid of approximately $796,000, as compared to the engineer's opinion of probable construction cost of $730,000. The low bid was received from DeJoya Suburban Excavating LLC of North Royalton, Ohio, whose bid was found to be in conformance with all contract requirements. It's therefore recommended that the contract be awarded to DeJoya Suburban Excavating LLC in the amount of $625,416.80. It is anticipated that work will begin in December, with project completion specified for May 1st of 2020. Thank you.
Move to suspend.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes. Ordinance number 19-0-094 is passed. Second reading, we have none. Third reading, we have none. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President, Council. Council, I'd ask for your concurrence in approving the reappointment of Mr. Richard Harvey to one of our two positions on the Lake County Health District Board. That term would extend from August 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2024. I've spoken to Mr. Harvey. He's been a real asset for us on that there, and he's willing to continue to serve.
So moved.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirchner? Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The Red Cross will have a blood drive on the Friday after Thanksgiving, November 29th, from noon to 6:30 p.m. at the Menor Civic Ice Arena. To make an appointment, go to www.redcrossblood.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS. And obviously, this time of the year, the need is a little bit greater. The week of December 9th will be the final week of the city's 2019 yard waste collection program. On Sunday, November 24th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., the police department will be holding its annual Fill a Cruiser Drive at the Giant Eagle on Tyler Boulevard. Non-perishable foods and monetary donations will be accepted. Donated food will be distributed to food pantries to benefit families within the city of Mentor. Cash donations will be used for the annual Cops and Kids program hosted by the police department to provide holiday gifts for children in need. And on that note, the annual Cops and Kids Holiday Party will be held Tuesday, December 3rd at 6 p.m. at the Mentor Civic Arena. This program began in 1983 to provide holiday gifts to children in need. Families are identified with the help of the Mentor school system, the Mentor Victims Advocate, and by our own police officers. And if any of our residents are interested in donating to that, they should contact our police department, who would be happy to receive those. The 25th Annual Rescue the Needy Food Drive was held under the direction of Fire Lieutenant Mike Smith and firefighter Dominic Vivolo recently, along with support from the fire department personnel. This year was another successful year, raising over $6,000. So we thank the residents and visitors to our community who support those efforts and that worthwhile cause. And then finally, we have one new business that we're very happy to welcome to our community, South Shore Controls, which will be beginning operation at 9395 Pinecone Drive. We welcome them and thank them for their investment here. That's all.
That's it? Okay, clerk's correspondence.
Council is in receipt of the Mentor Municipal Court month-end report, October 2019. That is all.
Thank you. Commission committee reports. We have the meeting minutes for the Board of Building and Zoning Appeals for October 8th, 2019. Old business, we have none. New business.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we move the May 19th, 2020 meeting to May 21st, 2020.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes. Do the appointments first?
New business?
Mr. Landy?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, because I remember a few falls ago, we had late leaves, and there were residents with 20 bags of leaves out there, and the city manager just stated that the final week of yard collection is when, Ken?
December 9th.
The week of December 9th.
Week of December 9th, yes, so that
Yeah.
would, I'm not.
And
on the
if we
calendar.
can make sure, I'm sure it's posted, I'm sure Ante's got it on the website and on the app and the channel and all those things. So just so people are aware, because that was a little bit of a missed information last time.
Well, I'll add to that too, because I've discussed this with Matt, and that is the fact that, you know, fortunately, the snow has melted and a lot of leaves were picked up, but Mr. Swigert said that if we wanted to extend that, we have to notify our hauler by December 1st. And then on top of that, it's $14,500 per week that we extend it. So I want everybody to be aware of that, because right now, it looks like the weather's going to be fine for everybody to finish up their leaves and so on. But he was on top of that and said he'd keep us informed if we needed to do that. So.
And on that follow-up, then, if there will be people that miss it, and I think a few years ago, we got some optional pay for leaf collection, that it might be good to be proactive and be able to feed that out to the residents that do miss.
Okay. We do have another thing. The City of Mentor is accepting resumes and applications for the following volunteer positions. 2 electors of the City of Mentor to serve 4-year terms on the Board of Building and Zoning Appeals ending 12/31/23. 1 elector of the City of Mentor to serve 4-year term on the Municipal Planning Commission ending 12/31/23. 1 elector of the City of Mentor to serve a 3-year term on the Fair Housing Board ending 12/31/22. 3 persons to serve 2-year terms on the Board of Tax Review ending 12/31/21. 1 elector of the City of Mentor to serve a 4-year term on the Tree Commission ending 12/31/23. Person seeking appointment to a position must submit an application and resume to the clerk of council. The deadline for the submission is 5:00 PM, December 15th, 2019. For more information, contact Schiavone@cityofmentor.com or call 440-974-5700.
Mr. President, I would move to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22, Section G2, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes for the reason that the premature disclosure of information would give us an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest.
Second. Exactly what he said.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Mr. President, I will move to go into regular session of City Council.
Second.
Thank you. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. President, I move to adjourn.
Second.